I'll tell you, Mr. Willen, I agree with you about it being nice that this is up here to hold on to. I might need to strap myself in. Well, Mr. Mickey asked me to speak first. He said to keep it short and simple. And there are a couple of things I'm pretty good at. So I'm going to try not to be too long. But when he first asked me, I mulled over in my mind what exactly I wanted to talk about. At first, I sort of thought maybe I'd speak about perceptions and, how we perceive the world around us and everything. I'm like, well, that might be a little too broad. And I refined it down to relationships and then a specific type of relationships. In my mind, we have basically three relationships. We have, first of all, our relationship with God. And secondly, our relationship with fellow believers. And then lastly, our relationship with people who do not share our faith. Tonight, I would like to focus on the last one, our relationships with people who are not Christians. As strange as it is to say, I typically worry more about what a non-believer might think of me out in public versus what somebody who does believe might think. Which is not to say I don't care what y'all think about me, but just, I'd be more afraid to offend somebody and turn them away from Christ. I tend to view it like the difference of when you're talking to your family, I consider all y'all family, versus talking to strangers. So when I'm talking with non-Christians, my words and actions tend to be more carefully measured and reserved. This evening I have a few things that I would like to go over that I observed or experienced while talking to non-believers about faith. The first thing I have discovered that's better to talk about Christ versus Christianity. Christianity is a word that has a lot of baggage that comes with it. Everything from, people bring up the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, Protestant Reformation, the Salem Witch Trial. Just to name a few things, historically. It is a word that has negative connotations for a lot of people. Let's just say you are talking to a new coworker, acquaintance, and you say, I'm a Christian. You are running the gambit of where that's going to land. You may get, so that's what's wrong with you, or you believe those old stories. People's perception of Christianity varies wildly. However, if you ask, what do you think of Christ? Well, the answer will be varied as well. Everything from, he might have been a good man, I don't know, or supposedly he was a son of God. Chances are it will be met with less hostility than Christianity, especially in this area due to the fact that you're more likely to encounter an atheist or an agnostic versus someone of another major religion. 2 Corinthians 4:5 says, "For we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ the Lord, and ourselves your bondservants for Jesus' sake." But unfortunately, what I have found is a lot of people will know what the Catholic Church is doing with its food drive, or the Methodist Church is doing with its builders program, but won't hardly know anything about Jesus. They are coming in contact with Christianity, but not with Christ. They are missing the entire message by mere inches. So that's another bonus of talking about Christ first. You might be telling them something new and indeed far more pertinent. The second thing I've noticed is the number of rabbit trails you will get led down is astonishing. When you are talking to someone about Christ or Christianity, it's sometimes surprising to hear the variety of questions that people will have on the subject. You will hear everything from, why is there disease? Why do we have war? Why are there different denominations? Why do some churches allow this or that when others won't? Or even, if God is so good, why did he let his own son die? Which out of all of them, I find the most curious, I guess you might say. It can be overwhelming at times, and it is easy to get caught up in all the little trivial details. To quote the Christian apologist and author, G.K. Chesterton, all roads lead to Rome, which is one reason why many people never get there. Which is true. You might be talking about Christ with someone. Next thing you know, you might be talking about slavery in the Bible and your views on, alcohol consumption even. Not that this is always a bad thing. You might be answering the one question that someone has a hang-up on, but you must bring it back around to Jesus. We have a responsibility, I believe, to be ready to answer questions when asked about Christ and to be able to give a concise testimony and information. And there's a couple of verses in the Bible that sum up what we are supposed to do. 1 Peter 3:15 through 16 says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear, having a good conscience, that whereas they speak evil of you as an evildoer, they may be ashamed that falsely accuse your good conversation in Christ." And the third point, and I'm sure all of y'all have heard this many times, but people are watching you constantly. We have all heard actions speak louder than words, and I found that statement to be true for the most part. When you're out working, shopping, or eating, I'm sure you have noticed, as I have, the way people act. You might notice someone praying over their meal, or someone helping an elderly person in the store. Then you might notice some of the uglier stuff. In fact, I hazard to say, we seem to notice it a whole lot more than the good. Someone yelling at a cashier over something they didn't cause and can't control, or someone in a fist fight in the KFC parking lot in Cordell. My first real fist fight I saw in Cordell was the most disappointing thing I ever saw. And only in Cordell, I mean, it was interesting. Now, I was two middle-aged women, which was the part that really, I just knew I needed to get out of there. I was at a football game not too long ago, and there was a gentleman there who had maybe had a little too much to drink. He was acting a bit surly and letting a few profanities slip. A few moments later, a couple more people from the same town started behaving the same way. And so you might say that I started to develop a profile for people from that town. Not that I think everyone from that town is that way, but I would be wary as there is a high chance they might be. Even though I wouldn't recognize those particular individuals if I met them again, if I met someone else from their town, I would already have some preconceived notions of what kind of character they might possess. And in the same way with Christianity, if I have the reputation of being a Christian and I do something that others see and frown upon, then even though they might not remember me specifically, their perception of Christians in general will have been skewed negatively. Titus 2:6-7 says, "Likewise, exhort the young men to be sober-minded in all things, showing yourself to be a pattern of good works and doctrine, showing integrity, reverence, and incorruptibility." I was talking to someone one day who was attending the same school as me, and he told me that he was an agnostic. And so we got on the subject of God, faith, and morals. The conversation had rocked on for a little bit when he told me that he felt he was a good and moral person, and in that, and if there was a God, he was okay. Naturally, my curiosity was piqued a little bit, so I asked him how he figured that. He then told me that he had a friend who claimed to be a Christian who had told him that he had way better morals and code of living than he did. That person, whether they truly were a Christian or not, had negatively affected the way their friend perceived believers. It also derailed the conversation I was having, as the person no longer really saw the value of Christ. In his mind, converting to Christianity would have meant downgrading his own morals. The next point I have is, sometimes you've got to walk away and let God handle them. As frustrating as it might be, you've got to let people go. Not everyone's going to accept the message of Christ with outstretched arms. You will come across people who have it fixed in their minds that they are good enough, or perhaps not good enough, where they might just stand resolute against everything you say. While I was talking to the fellow student I mentioned earlier, the conversation we were having devolved into him trying to belittle every little thing, and I started to see, no matter how well I answered his questions, it wasn't going to be good enough. So at the end, I told him that at the end of the day, it was between him and God. I can only present the information. I can't force him to accept it. And that if he needed anything, all he had to do was contact me. After all, in a certain sense, we are like salesmen. We can only show and demonstrate God's love to others. Our lives are a sales pitch to show others a better way to be, but at the end of the day, they have to accept it. We can't force them to take it. Acts 4:12 says, "Nor is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given amongst men by which we must be saved." And John 14:6, Jesus said to him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And finally, the last thing I noticed is people just want you to be genuine with them. They want you to be real. I've seen books and people who claim that they have discovered the formula to witnessing to people. But I have found in my experience that talking to people about Christ is everything but formulaic. Sure, there are certain points you try to hit, but sometimes your encounters are brief, just a minute or two to say some kind words, to pray with someone who needs it, or you might just strike up a general conversation and at work and work God in here or there. As someone who's been in sales, I can tell you there is no cookie-cutter approach to selling a product. Every customer is different, and I can pretty much guarantee you there isn't a cookie-cutter method for sharing Jesus either. What I have found is just showing that you care and love others will go a lot farther than anything else. And being honest as well. I know earlier I said to be prepared to share, and we should, but no one knows everything. If you don't know something, just say so. People respect that more than, "Oh, that's not relevant," or "that would confuse you," or "why do you keep changing the subject?" Don't be scared to call in backup. If you know someone who has more knowledge than you, don't be afraid to call them. And I guess to sum it all up, what I've noticed that if you keep Christ at the heart of everything, you'll be okay. I would like to thank all of you for your time and attention this evening, and now I would like to hand it over to Mr. Brown.